Okay, good evening, Earth. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting Escape. Alright. Well, Escape 2, technically. Alright, so for the file folder name anyway, to keep it from merging with my other file folder of the same name. So, but it's Escape. So, today I've drawn in a white arm, pretty central in the composition, and I'm just gonna do a basic fill-in with the color for that right now. So here we go. We aimed pretty good.
Converser with angels, mathematician par excellence, determined, under the influence of the mysterious Edward Kelly, that he was to be the center of an alchemical renaissance and a secret society that would lay the groundwork for the continuation of the dream of Australia, the dream built around the Elizabethan Queen Elizabeth I. He associated himself intensely with the Arthurian mythical and mystical side of the Elizabethan ideal of British Empire. He was a Welshman, like the Queen he was so intensely devoted to, and like her he shared the Renaissance mood of Saturnian melancholy, a collector of books, a builder of scientific instruments, a composer of codes and ciphers, fascinated with alchemy. Dee was both the figure of the introspective melancholic and the world-planning, empire-building political visionary. Dee was under the patronage of the Earl of Northumberland, and it was Northumberland who looted the Catholic monasteries at the time of Henry VIII. We have reason to believe that John Dee had virtual carte blanche in selecting manuscripts from those libraries that interested him. Not only was Dee a scholar of the classics and the magical past, but he was an intimate friend with some of the great movers and shakers of his own time, particularly Sir Philip Sidney, and the entire coterie of poets and artists who had gathered themselves around Elizabeth, Australia, to celebrate her reign and to make of her the paradigmatic sovereign of Europe that Dee believed led the way toward the establishing of a universal alchemical monarchy. It was essentially a poetic enterprise, as alchemy always is. Merlin, in the Arthurian legends, has come down to us basically disguised as John Dee. The image we have of Merlin is Dee's image. So Dee possessed an enormous power over the imagination of his contemporaries. They were in awe of his learning. Or let my lamp at midnight hour be seen in some high lonely tower, where I may oft watch the bear with thrice great Hermes, or unsphere the spirit of Plato to unfold what worlds and what vast regions hold. Perhaps we are the naive ones. Perhaps we too quickly assumed that we had understood all there was to know about matter. After all, even to this moment, we cannot locate the seat of the imagination in matter. We cannot trace the evolution of a human thought or hope in matter. It's almost as though the alchemists, through their humility, had a deeper insight into the workings of the world than we have achieved today. The transformation of matter into a universal panacea for the redemption of mankind. This was Dee's great passion. This was the overarching theme of his life, a deep, deep commitment to the reformation of society and a deep, deep exhaustion and rejection of the values of Christendom that he saw betrayed all about him. And then by distillation, and then by coagulation, and then by concentration through firing, the alchemical body is brought to completion. These are processes that go on both within the chemical retort, the alembic, in the alchemist's laboratory, and they are processes which go on in the heart and mind of the alchemist. One process dissolves, another process separates the dross, the gross matter from the precious, another concentrates the subtle essence, another raises the subtle essence to another level of refinement. And over time, the great friend of the alchemist, this process of rarefaction and growth, both metallic and psychological, both internal and external, both personal and impersonal, proceeds and feeds upon itself, and eventually, not through any logic discernment of the scientific mind, there is a kind of miracle, the production of the stone, the union of spirit and matter, the fusion of these two contradictory aspects of the universe into a new and third thing, the quintessence, the rubedo, the lapis philosophorum, the aqua vitae, the nostra lapis philosophorum delicium. I would place Dr. D at the center of this business, and then it's a dissolve. And what we're 15 the angelic encounter. All you that famed philosophers will be, and night and day in Gilder's kitchen broil, wasting the chips of ancient Hermes tree, meaning to turn them to a precious soil. The more you work, the more you lose and spoil. To you I say, how learned soe'er you be, go burn your books and come and learn of me. He was unusually susceptible to the claims of Edward Kelly, who came to Dee with two bona fides, a mysterious book written in hieroglyphics and a red powder which he claimed to be a partially completed approach to the alchemical elixir. With these two bits of evidence in hand, Dee fell fully under the spell of Kelly and his scrying ability, and communing with spirits and entities discerned within. he was at last obtaining entrance into the angelic realms he had so long sought. The diaries of Dee show that over a period of years and on a daily basis, he and Edward Kelly would regularly retire to the inner chambers of Dee's house, first at Mortlake, and then in a series of courtly sittings as they moved about Europe. And in these seances, in these settings, a vast cast of angels and voices passed in parade, always egging our protagonists deeper into the Rosicrucian Enlightenment and the political dispensation that they sought. In 1583, they arrived at last in Prague. Prague at that time was ruled by Rudolf II, the occult emperor, collector of dwarves and giants, patron of alchemy and astrology, one of the most eccentric and extravagant rulers in the entire panoply of European history. And it was to Rudolf, and it was to the people around Rudolf, and the emperor's private secretary, Count Palatine Michael Meyer, it was to these established and renowned alchemists that Dee brought his plan and drew them forward toward the idea of an alchemical reformation. Was able to lay the groundwork for events which a generation later would blossom into the Rosicrucian Enlightenment. Cosmos is reflected in the mystery of man and woman, the mystery of the human mind-body interface. It's important to see Dee as a kind of culmination of tradition that had been at work for over 150 years in Europe. The use of astrology, numerology, Hebrew Kabbalah, and the doctrine of signatures to produce a magical theory of nature and man's place in it can be traced to a generation before people like Henry Cornelius Agrippa von Nettelsheim, who became the prototype for Faust. The Bishop Trithemius, the great developer of codes and ciphers, one of these great passions. The Florentine magician Marcello Ficino, who was the great rediscoverer and promoter of the Hermetic knowledge, and upon which he drew very heavily. But he took their work and added the dimension of the idea of essentially in support of the values of the young Queen Elizabeth and her astray reign. Alchemy and the history of alchemy is full of contradictions, inconsistencies, unions of opposite, if you will. The very year that the Rosicrucian manifestos claimed the attention of the European public, 1608, Dee died in poverty and disappointment in his now half-looted and abandoned home at Mortlake. The alchemical dream that Dee had sought to live was to be completed, if at all, by personalities other than himself.
Our revels now ended. These are actors, as I foretold you, but all spirits are melted into air, to thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, cloud-capped towers, gorgeous palaces, solemn temples, great globe itself, yea, all which it inherit, shall dissolve, and like this insubstantial pageant fade, leave not a wreck behind. Yes, such stuff as dreams are made of, and our little life is rounded with a sleep.
Frederick the Elector, the fifth Palatine Prince of Heidelberg, 16 years old, was betrothed by an arranged marriage to Elizabeth Stuart of England, the daughter of James I, the great-granddaughter of Henry VIII of England. She too was but 16 years old when they were married in one of the most dramatic nuptials that London had ever witnessed. Frederick had come to England to claim his queen, accompanied by courtiers, alchemists, and his advisor Christian von Anhalt, an alchemical dreamer who saw in the marriage of the young couple the opportunity for the establishment of a Protestant alchemical kingdom in Central Europe. The young couple, lost in love, made their way back to Frederick's beautiful Palatinate in southern Germany, and there they intended to dwell and found a dynasty. But such was not to be. And they were the center of a movement of alchemical reformation and revolution, of spiritual freedom, and to my mind, a very sort of psychedelic world. A rarefaction, good alchemical word, a rarefaction of the human imprint on this planet, a spiritualization of humanity, and a new order of mind folded in to this pair of 16-year-olds. So to take an incident like the career of Frederick the Elector Palatine of Heidelberg and his bride, and make of it a kind of exemplar, a parable, a myth, if you will, the myth of the alchemical marriage, a myth that takes innocence and naivete and belief in the power of ideas to make a new world. In the decades immediately before the birth of modern science, the exploration of the New World and the flowering of the alchemical imagination confronted European man with a bewildering complexification of nature, and the primary symbol used to understand this bewildering variety of phenomena was the labyrinth, the palace, the Acropolis complex, stretched through time and space, architectonic, pregnant with mnemonic possibility. The palace, the court, became the symbol at the center of the social mandala of the European imagination, and never more so than here at Heidelberg, where Frederick and Elizabeth literalized the mnemonic and alchemical intentions of the age in a vast, sprawling complex of red sandstone cut with secret passageways, hidden doorways, and complexity found ordinarily only in the depths of the human unconscious and the alchemical imagination. Standing here in the alchemical laboratory of the palace in Heidelberg, we are essentially at the center of the alchemical hopes of the Rosicrucian Enlightenment. It was here in the years before the adventure in Bohemia that Frederick's alchemists, astrologers, and soothsayers toiled directly under the king's observation and control. Here came Michael Meyer, Heinrich Kundra, the great names of alchemy. It's entirely possible that John Dee was in this room. It's entirely possible that Edward Kelly stood where I am standing now. It's almost impossible to conceive.
All right. Well, that sets up an adequate foundation. Now we'll start shadowing and blending with glazes and highlighting with glazes, and working on the background elements and ground. But that's it for the moment, I think. I'll zoom in. Some of those brush strokes are kind of nice. Kind of kept a subtle texture to it. You know, this is just like the cement, but still, form is decent. And some of the brush strokes are kind of cool. Alright, but that's it for the moment.
It's called the pelican because it is associated with the myth of a bird which plucks blood from its own breast. The primal materia, feces, black coal, charcoal, salt, nitrogen.
Thank you for watching. That's Adam Sturch,
Brought to a high
broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico.
Rises into the higher
Working on oil painting Escape.
And there, rarefied, it condenses, liquefies,
Have a good night, Earth.
and flows down into the cooler
Oh, and stay tuned for Amazonian Shamanism premiering
Here the essence
after it uploads. I think it's done building.